My name is Paula Taras, and welcome to tonight's panel discussion on financial aid for students with disabilities, organized by the Higher Education Services Corporation. So financial aid and other services can help students with disabilities continue their college education and seek out rewarding career opportunities. So disabilities can include physical, cognitive, learning disabilities, and neurological disabilities. So today we're going to be exploring federal financial aid, state student assistance programs, as well as targeted scholarships to help students pay for documents and also, pay for college, and also look at the different types of documents that may be required to provide services to students. So we're going to start by finding out who's joining us tonight. And we have some great experts with us. We have Dr. Lauren Rodriguez, who is the Director of Resources for Students with Disabilities at SUNY. And we also have Victoria Starr, who is the Director of Counseling at Albany District Office of Access VR. And we also have Raymond Perez, who is the Director of Accessibility Resource Center at Hostess Community College. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you to the attendees. We will begin with some questions for our panelists. And for the attendees, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A or chat feature to ask your question, and my colleague Maria will be able to assist you, or we can answer your questions in the end during the Q&A section as well. So for the first, we're going to be focusing on federal aid and programs at some CUNY schools. So we know that the first step in applying for financial aid to help students pay for college is to, of course, complete the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. And that becomes available October 1st of a student's senior year. So once students apply, they may be eligible to receive funding such as the Pell Grant, federal supplemental educational opportunity grants, and work study programs. So Raymond, can students with disabilities apply for FAFSA?
So the answer is absolutely yes. Students with disabilities enrolled in a full-time or part-time undergraduate or graduate college program are eligible to apply. Of course, they must meet financial eligibility, and based on how many credits they're taking, their award will be calculated. But the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay, great. And for students who receive disability benefits, does that affect their financial aid award letter at all?
So I'm happy to report the answer is no. According to the Social Security Administration, students' financial assistance is not considered income. It will not affect financial aid or work study awards. On the reverse, their benefits will not affect them receiving financial aid. If anything, it's actually a plus. So although the application will ask them questions about their Social Security award, it's going to be extremely important that you provide it to FAFSA, because it will guarantee that you'll be able to be eligible for financial aid.
Okay, thank you. And are there any federal programs for students who do not have a local diploma or a GED?
So 2 years ago, the answer would have been no. Today, I'm happy to report the answer is yes. Students who received something called a Career Development Occupational Studies Commencement Credential, CDOS. It was also known as the IEP, Individual Educational Plan Diploma, can now apply. Specifically right now, to Hostess Community College, one of the CUNY branches that will allow that student to become part of a program called CUNY Unlimited. CUNY Unlimited is a career transition program that allows students with a CDOS or IEP diploma to enroll in college. We're hoping that in the next year or so, we will have programs in our sister and brother campuses, Borough Manhattan Community College, Queensborough Community College, and at Kingsborough Community College. The program itself allows students to experience the college experience, choose a career path, and achieve a meaningful credential that will lead to successful employment. We do that in partnership right now with a community-based organization known as AHRC. These students would have not normally been able to receive a college education, but this new CTB program will allow that.
Okay, that's great. So do the students have to complete the same amount of credits, or is it in a certain amount of time, or does that vary because based on the program?
Great question. It depends on the student. So the program is really created individually, looking at the students. The most that a student can spend in the program right now is 4 years. That can change, and you can spend as little as 2 years in the program. But the expectation that most students will spend 4 years in this program. Again, the program is a full-time program, but we're looking at each student individually based on their career interests, putting a program together.
Got it. So we know that students with disabilities can qualify for FAFSA, whether they have a local diploma or a GED or not. And also there are citywide programs. Do students with disabilities qualify for any New York State financial aid programs?
Yes, we're hoping in the next year or so, if successful, students will also be able to receive state assistance for the CTP program. But right now, if you are a full-time student with a disability, you are eligible for HESC and to be able to apply for TAP. You're also able to apply for something called the Excelsior scholarship. If you are a student with a disability and based on the limitation of the disability, doesn't allow you to take a full-time course load, you could be eligible for something called ADA TAP, part-time TAP, or part-time Excelsior scholarship. With the Excelsior scholarship, if the family or the income has to be under $125,000, but if so, they could apply. And at that point, depending on how many credits the student decides to take, the requirement is able to fulfill them or complete them successfully. In other words, passing the amount of credits you have agreed to take. So for a student, it could be 6 credits, it could be 9 for another student, but the idea is what you commit to, that's what you have to fulfill at the end of that academic year.
Got it. Thank you so much, Raymond.
You're welcome.
And now we will move on to speaking with Victoria at XSVR. So each state offers vocational rehabilitation programs to help students with disabilities access training to find or keep a job, and services are tailored to meet each student's needs. Vocational rehabilitation can pay for post-secondary education, on-the-job training, assistive technology, and career counseling. So Victoria, can you tell us a little bit more about what Access VR is and the types of financial support and services Access VR provides?
Sure. Access VR stands for Adult Career and Continuing Education Services / Vocational Rehabilitation. And so Access VR used to be called VESID. A lot of people are familiar with that term. So it is the state voc rehab program for people who have disabilities and want to become employed, and assisting with college, some sort of financial aid is one of the services that we do offer if college is necessary for the student or the adult to reach their vocational goal. And the vocational goal has to be agreed upon with the student and their vocational counselor. So if college is necessary and the student / family meet economic need, there is financial assistance on our end that we can provide, but the student must apply for, complete the FAFSA, and all TAP and Pell is used first before Access VR funding is used.
Okay, and what are the eligibility requirements for Access VR services?
Okay, so to be eligible for Access VR services, you have to have a disabling condition, which could be, cognitive, developmental, learning disability, physical disability, neurological, that impedes your ability to become employed. It presents barriers to becoming employed. And so people applying for Access VR have to submit documentation of their disability. And if we find that it presents a barrier to employment, then they would be eligible for services.
Okay, so we know that, like, for instance, an IEP could be could be the type of documentation.
Sure.
What other types might be asked to provide?
So if we're looking at a typical high school student that's applying for services, it could be an IEP, school psychological, 504 plan, any medical documentation. If, let's say, they have a physical disability, but not necessarily an IEP, all that documentation would need to be submitted to Access VR. And most of our schools in New York State have transition coordinators that help with that process.
Got it. Is college required for students' work goal, or can they look into other post-secondary options besides college?
Sure, we help. We have financial assistance for any kind of post-secondary school, so cosmetology school, massage therapy, adult BOCES programs for, let's say, HVAC, construction, electrical engineering, whatever those schools offer. We're usually partners. We're technically always partners with those schools as well.
Okay. And do the financial need-based services support private New York State colleges?
Yes, they do. We can assist with private school tuition and fees, but we only go up to SUNY rates. So the SUNY tuition right now is $7,070. And so if somebody was, let's say, just, going to Harvard, that would be the maximum amount that we could contribute after Pell is applied. But in most cases, the Pell doesn't cover most of the tuition. So all of our grant would be used in that case.
Got it. So we know that some programs like the Excelsior Scholarship require students to either have a pre or in-school responsibilities and post. Does Access VR, are there any pre and post student responsibilities when accessing services from Access VR?
Well, the expectation is that you're going to go to work after training. I mean, Voc Rehab is all about employment. It's not about paying for college or training. It's about employment. So we're looking at the end goal. So the student is entering into like a contract with us that they are going to look for work when they're done with training, that they're going to provide documentation every year, that they're going to keep in touch with their counselor if there's any changes in their program. So there are responsibilities on their end to provide that information to us every single year and stay in touch with us. And in some cases, or many cases, the students need job placement assistance when they're done. So we're involved in that as well. But in some cases, students don't need our help, but we expect them to let us know when they have found employment and give us those details of their employment.
Got it. And is it usually, do you find it that students, after completing or accessing the services, they are able to find employment fairly easily?
It's unique for everybody. Yes, in many cases, no, in some. We try to explain to families that it's important that students try to get work experience, during the summers and while they're in college to increase their chances of employment when they graduate.
Got it. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Thank you.
All right, and now we will ask some questions of Lauren. So according to the National Center for Educational Statistics, nearly 1 in 5 college students has a disability. And to serve these learners, campuses typically offer a number of services to ensure support and access for their students. And college disability services can help students with disabilities access the services that they need. So Victoria, what types of support does the SUNY Disability Service offer to students?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. So on each campus, we have an office that works with students with disabilities, and oversees accommodation requests to make sure that students with disabilities have equal access to our courses, our programs, and our services. And so when we're talking about accommodations, they're being assigned to mitigate the impact of a student's disability on their involvement in any type of activity. So the types of supports vary based on the campus, but overall, in addition to supporting the approved accommodations, disability offices offer consultation regarding assistive technologies. So that might be related to technologies to help support note-taking or different types of programs to read text out loud. A lot of times they're very connected to the different resources on campus. So making sure they make appropriate referrals based on the student's self-report. So for example, maybe to the counseling center or to the learning center where there might be tutoring offered for free, and consulting a lot with faculty regarding a student's accommodations and making sure they understand how to implement the accommodations. Other campuses, and it really depends. So while you're looking at colleges, definitely inquire. But some might offer peer mentor type programs or pre-orientation sessions specifically for students with disabilities, maybe some weekly check-in type of support with a staff member. It really depends on the campus.
Got it. And so if I'm a student who does require services, how do I go about requesting accommodations at my college?
Yeah, sure. So we recommend you contact the Disability Services Office on your campus as early as possible. Check out their website and inquire about what their process is to request accommodations. At the college level, it's the student's responsibility to self-identify with the appropriate office and make the request and follow the process for accommodations. So initially, the first step usually includes submitting some type of information about yourself. That might be starting the process online these days. Sometimes it's more of a paper-based form, but you'll include information about yourself, disability-related barriers that you've experienced, and what types of accommodations that you think you're requesting for the college setting.
So in addition to that information about themselves, what types of documents do they need to access these services?
Yeah, so, you know, when we get accommodation requests on the campuses, we really go through an individual review process. We look at each student's request on a case-by-case basis and really how they're impacted by their disability in the environment. So we look at a variety of forms of documentation. So some of that is the student self-report. So learning more about their previous educational experiences, their history of using accommodations, and what's been effective and maybe ineffective in providing access from them. So it's really helpful when a student can articulate some of that information from their educational experience. We also, students oftentimes submit information from third parties. So that might be an IEP and a psychological evaluation from high school, 504 plan, or any type of like medical documentation from an outside treatment provider. But overall, in general, our advice is if you're coming out of high school, gather as much information as possible from your high school to submit to the disability office. Because in the long run, you know, you may want to go to grad school and you might want to request accommodations for grad school. So the more information we have, the better we may be able to provide documentation later for like a grad school type of test that you might need to take.
Got it. And I know you spoke about this earlier, but what additional types of accommodations can students receive at the college level?
Yeah, sure. So there's no general like accommodation plan that's appropriate for all students or for a particular disability. And then also students might require different accommodations in different courses depending on the type of course it is. But so for example, some types of academic accommodations at the college setting might be test accommodations such as extended time, note-taking assistance such as using a type of technology, recording your lectures, offering interpreting services or CART services. Sometimes there might be like a modification to a policy in a course that's presenting a particular barrier, and sometimes course substitutions. It really depends on the student. So that's the academic realm. And then if you're going to a residential campus where you intend to live on campus, We also review requests for accessible campus housing if you may experience a barrier in campus housing, emotional support animals in campus housing, and working with students who may need some type of accommodation related to a medical condition or dietary restrictions with access to the meal plan, making sure they have access to the food services on campus.
Got it. And is there a deadline for requesting accommodations?
So for academic accommodations, there's no deadline. You can request accommodations at any time, but what you need to remember is they're not retroactive. So you can't take a test without your accommodations that weren't set up and then say, well, I didn't set up my accommodations, I need to be able to retake that test with them. It doesn't work retroactively. So our advice is always to follow the process to request academic accommodations before the semester starts. Even if you're not sure you're going to use them, you want to make sure they're proactively set up because you can't go back retroactively and use them. When it comes to accommodations in campus housing, if you were to submit an accessible campus housing related accommodation, you really need to consult with the campus regarding their requested submission date, so that if the accommodation were approved, they would have the space available to assign you. So there's no deadline, but it's generally a required submission date. So if approved, we can guarantee the space is available.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much, Victoria. Sorry, Lauren.
You're welcome.
And I actually had I was thinking of Victoria because I have a similar question for her that I forgot to ask. When should students begin applying for Access VR services?
Generally, we accept applications starting in the 11th grade. There's limited amount of services we can offer in 11th grade, but definitely by the senior year, preferably at the beginning of the school year. And if you are applying for the first time, maybe you weren't associated with a school referral, our deadline for college assistance is April 15th. So if you apply after April 15th for services, chances are you wouldn't receive any kind of assistance for the fall semester, but we would look at the spring. I just want to throw in here too, is one of the other critical services we offer is like rehab tech evaluations. So we work with a wonderful evaluator out of Rochester who can do evaluations even remotely and determine what kind of rehab technology a student might need in college. And again, based on family income, it's possible that we could purchase that rehab technology. And the other thing that we offer now that's kind of a newer service is coaching supports while you're in college. So it's not like tutoring, right. But it's like coaching to help keep you organized. It helps the student be accountable to somebody. It's been a really great and valuable service for a lot of students that are kind of struggling with some independence in college. And definitely the parent should not be that coach and calling the student saying, did you do your homework tonight? So right. We have found this to be a really valuable service, right? In the last couple of years.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. So we know that a question related to that, we know that some students with disabilities might need to find accessible housing, which can limit their options. So if it's not available on campus, students may face higher housing costs and additional transportation costs to travel to and from campus. Either of you can take this. Are there any resources out there to help students find these accommodations and pay for it in terms of housing accessibility?
Well, Access VR doesn't help find housing. We do help. There's a small stipend for housing. It's about it's under $1,100 a semester. So if the person lives on campus or off campus, if they live on campus, the money goes to the school. If they live off campus, the money goes to the student in the form of a biweekly check. But we don't assist with finding accessible housing.
Okay, got it. And a similar question with like technology. So some students may require specialized technology like specific computers or devices. How do students go about finding colleges that provide the technological support that they need in order to succeed?
So, Paula, I think, I think it was really important that Lauren had brought up documentation, right? And the ability to make sure that you retrieve whatever you can while you're in high school, because as you transition to college, the burden's on the student, on the family, and that can be extremely costly. So if we take anything from today, please make sure you get all the documentation you can to be able, as you apply for college, to be able to have that to create the accommodation. One of the things that are important are what are the suggested accommodations. We can definitely have that discussion, whether it's SUNY or CUNY with the student, but it's going to be really important that the experts doing that evaluation take a look at that and look how that student learns best and what they're going to need to be successful. We can guess on a college campus, but why would we do that if we can, rely on the experts to
Right.
provide us that? And, to Victoria's point, extremely beneficial to get that assistive technology, that tech evaluation. It has become a game changer, not only on higher education, but transitioning to successful employment. It's really hard to take a physical accommodation you might receive on campus and transition to employment, but using a piece of technology that provides the same service does, make a huge difference. In learning it as early as you can and getting that training is extremely beneficial when we talk about academic success at the college setting.
Okay, thank you so much, Raymond. So in addition to services provided by XSVR, SUNY Student Disability Services Office, and Hostos, we also have websites that you guys can look into that provide longer list of different types of scholarships for students with disabilities. So CUNY on their website, and I think Maria has been putting them in the chat, and you guys can just click on those links to be able to access those scholarships that are available. And they vary from cognitive to physical disabilities. So CUNY scholarships for students with disabilities. You also have scholarships.com that has a great extensive list. And scholarshipinstitute.org is also a great place. So at this time, if you guys have any questions, the attendees, you can ask it in the Q&A or the chat, and we can share with the panelists and answer it. Maria, are you seeing anything in the?
I think Ray's CUNY resources just went to host and panelists.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh, I think like the information in the chat, we could probably copy it. He was sharing the CUNY stuff. I think it just went to.
Can you guys see it?
I can resend it.
So someone asked, let me stop sharing.
Paula, there's two questions in the Q&A session. And I'm not sure if you guys answered this one, but the first one is, if my child has a disability, don't it get determined by salary? I'm a single mom and
The father doesn't contribute.
yeah.
So I think scholarships, financial aid is determined on financial need. And based on what your salary is, if your child is a dependent, right, it will be determined on your taxes. If you meet that financial eligibility, your child will be able to not only apply for FAFSA, they will also be able in New York State and city apply for TAP. And if you're making under $125,000, they would be eligible for the Excelsior scholarship. There's also other scholarships and opportunities for students with or without disabilities. So students should definitely take advantage. And in my experience, there's always a way to find funding to educate yourself. You just have to be able to take the time out to do a little research on Google. Also connect with the college campuses that you're attending to go to and have that conversation. I think how you're going to pay for school and how you're going to receive accommodations and what accommodations are available is probably as important as picking that career goal and major.
Right. And Raymond is right. If you guys, do your due diligence and search for different types of scholarships, there's money out there. But one thing we always tell students is to be careful of any websites that ask you for any personal information, such as social security number, credit cards, right? Because there are a lot of scammers out there that will say, we'll get you a scholarship for this amount of money in your name, as long as you provide this information. So any website that asks you for such information is not a good website. You should not use that website. Okay. The next question we have is, does type 1 diabetic qualify for excess VR?
So the answer is yes and maybe no. Okay, so type 1 diabetes comes with several health issues for people, and so certainly those health issues can cause barriers to employment, but you can also be type 1 and have few problems and no barriers to employment. So it really depends on the situation.
Got it. Thank you.
I think it's important not to look so much at the diagnosis, but the limitations based on that diagnosis. That's usually what we're accommodating and what we're providing assistance for as they transition to college and to employment.
Right. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
I put a resource in the chat. There's a college diabetes network.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. Any more questions? Maybe you guys are thinking of questions. And as you're doing that, I just want to share some other links with you. I think Maria has, again, put it in the chat. So Access VR's website has been put in the chat, SUNY Disability Services, and also Hostess Accessibility Resource Centers. Links have all been put in the chat. Okay. And if you guys would like more information on the different types of events that HESC is having, we provide FAFSA workshops, drop-ins on Wednesdays, various topics for panel discussions. You can get that information by going to starthere.org/events. And if you guys are interested in learning more about the different types of financial aid available for New York State residents to pay for college, you can go to hesc.ny.gov. And if you guys have any questions, you can email us at thepath@hesc.ny.gov.
I also put my email in the chat. So if anyone has CUNY specific questions, it might not think about it now, but later on, I definitely do my best to ask on behalf of the CUNY. And also remember that many college campuses, CUNY and SUNY, they do have waivers when it comes to the application fee. They just have to check in with that campus and find out based on their economic need or situation. They might not even have to, pay to be able to file an application.
Okay, thank you, Raymond. I don't see any more questions in the chat or Q&A. So I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us this evening and providing such important information. And also thank you to the participants for attending. Panelists, do you guys have any closing remarks you'd like to share?
Just thank you for coming out. I think, being able to learn about college and how to pay for it, it's extremely important. Never too late to be able to, apply for college, and definitely career goals and majors and academic plans work hand in hand. So think about what you would like to do, look for a major that fits that, and reach out to that college or university that might have that program and interest.
Definitely. And connect with Access VR.
Thank you again, everyone. At the end of this meeting for our attendees, there will be a quick survey. Please take a couple of minutes to fill it out. It's just about 4 questions. And again, thank you for joining us. Thanks again to the panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Right back.
Bye.
Bye.